So tonight's topic, how to be an impact player. This is a topic Maryann and I are obsessed with. Like we really are, because really we know that it's not a perfect world, but we do have control over the things that we do and the kind of reputation we want to have and the way that we want to work, right? We all want to work with passion. Nothing is worse than being in a role where you really feel like you're just a drone, right? A cog in a wheel. And I think this sort of mindset, the book behind it, and other things, I think could be really, really helpful. So with that said, Maryann, take us through these slides.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cynthia. We would love to get into what an impact player is. And obviously an impact player can be anyone. It can be a leader, it can be an individual contributor, but it's someone who drives meaningful change and achieves results aligned to the organization's broader goals. Basically, the book goes into detail into impact players and individual contributors. And we talked last night all about what sets those two apart and how we've done things ourselves. Cynthia and I went into it last night on how we have made mistakes. And when she gives ideas of, or gave examples of different things you did as just a contributor, and we were like, oh yeah, we did that. Yeah, yep, we did that before too, and that's how you learn. And I think that becoming an impact player and having all of these characteristics of an impact player comes from making those mistakes and comes from learning what will actually make a difference in the organization. So we think that having a growth mindset is one of the main things about being an about being an impact player. If you think that you can achieve something and you continuously work towards it, that just sets you apart from just being a normal contributor in the workforce. An impact player also fosters change. They collaborate. We got into collaboration last night and how important that is. As you know, we have collaboration groups here in office hours. So I'm sure you guys have many examples of ways you can contribute in those groups as an impact player just by collaborating with people in your same boat, or collaborating with different departments. We talked about collaborating with sales, collaborating with marketing, and the different ways you can show how to be an impact player by using those resources and those other people in your network to try to achieve the greatest results. Go ahead, Cynthia. What do you want to talk more about this? I feel like I'm sick of hearing myself talk.
No problem. I'm happy to step in. I think again, and these are just some of the traits. So some of the things too, like I think a very important one is, mastering self-reflection. I think one of the things I think definitely earlier in my career was I would join a company and I'd be like, well, it's up to them to train me. I'm gonna work as hard as I can, but if they're not going to give me the information, then I can only go so far, and that's true. But I didn't look back on myself and say, but how can I upskill myself? How can I do better for me? How can I take initiative to grow my career? And I think that self-reflection is one of the key things that I've noticed, especially in the people that I know that I admire, like the thought leaders that I follow, my mentors, my coaches. They are like definitely happy to put that mirror back on themselves. And I think that's what helps make you better, because instead of looking at it like as a negative, an impact player will look at it as an opportunity to grow, which I think could be, really make a massive change. And
Absolutely.
at the same time, all of these practices, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you're out there saying like, you should do this and you should do that. No. Everyone has their own journey. And that's why being humble, I think, is part of it, right? Like, you don't have to be like bossy and try to convince everyone to do what you're doing. They need to do what they do. I feel like in those instances, it's better to lead by example. But if people ask, share your knowledge. Or if you're working at a company and someone comes to you, maybe someone junior comes to you and is like lost or worried or upset or just whatever, share your knowledge. I have unfortunately been in situations, and maybe you all have too, where I've been like the new kid on the block and trying to sort things out, and people just like knowingly hold information, especially on sales teams. It used to be really terrible because they didn't want to share their secret sauce. Impact players always share their secret sauce. Happy to share that. Happy to collaborate with others. Happy to share credit. And recognize others. Right. Those are a couple other things. Maryann, you want to pick it up?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think also like we talked about, when you do that and you have that, you make those mistakes early in your career, and like they're not even mistakes. I feel like they're just like learning roadblocks, because as you do them, you realize later the mistake that you made. And that's that self-reflection. That goes back to that of like, what could I have done differently? And then if you're put in that same situation, you don't make the same mistakes the second time around. So I do love that part of it. Also, just seeing a project through to completion. There's a lot of times where a project will come up and it's a new shiny object and people jump onto it. And then as it starts to get dull and less shiny, people start to back out and start to put it to the wayside and don't move on to the next new shiny object. So that is something that sets an impact player apart, is just finishing the job even when you don't want to. Go ahead, Randall, right? I feel like that happens very often. I see it all the time. Randall, what do you have to share?
Well, I think another point, because this was a big part for me before I recently got my most recent job, was showing an impact even before you have the job. So like you talk about that growth mindset, like showing you're learning, continuously trying to know how to grow. I think a lot of those things are obviously impactful when you have a job, but it's also showing that you've done the work even before you have the job, so that you actually can show you can do it when you have a job. I think all those things were
Absolutely.
what I think I tried to instill upon myself, as a showing kind of before the fact that I can do once I get a job, of some of those traits that make me an impact player once I got my job.
Oh, Randall, I
Right.
love that. It's so funny you say this because I don't know if you all or any job seekers on this line follow Austin Belchak, but if you don't, I would definitely give him a follow. He did a great post about that, Randall. Basically, he had like 9 steps about way back when he started in his career. He was trying to pivot, blindly applying to companies, not one response. And then he got very strategic, and was basically doing what you just said, saying like, look, targeting companies, targeting networking with people. He, in this instance, he was going for big companies like Twitter and Microsoft and Google, I think, and he was interviewing with them. But he was getting at least 10 contacts at each company, having conversations with them, gathering what they needed, like the problems they were trying to solve, going away, working, like putting slides together, and,
Figuring it out. Yep.
going back to his contacts and saying, hey, Johnny, you said, thanks for the great conversation. I thought about what we talked about. I put this together. And that, he was in play at those companies and wound up at Microsoft with zero tech background. So Randall, that was one of the things that, like you said, showing the value so they get a feel for, first of all, what your mindset is, that you'll go away, not even working there, do some work to show them what you can do. But also too, like demonstrating what you know. And I think that's a big differentiator. And in this market, you can't just blindly apply. You do need to figure out like sneaky ways, which I don't know if it's even that sneaky, but
I
different
was
ways.
gonna
Just
say they're not
creative.
even sneaky. They're just creative. Exactly. That's the perfect word to describe them.
Definitely. So I love that, Randall. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think we all need to hear these things. Um, but yeah, great example. And then finally also too, we almost forgot, embraces chaos. Ambiguous situations are an opportunity to lead. We've all been in those ambiguous situations where,
Yep.
there's like, hey, there's this initiative, but nobody seems to be leading it. Oh, there's this project. It's like it's been hanging out there, and like everyone on the team owns it, so no one owns it. If you really want to distinguish yourself, be the one to take the lead and say, okay, I can do X. I would love to start it this way. Who else? And then start triggering, like talking to other, peers, can you help on this? Do you want to help on this? How can we start this process? Because by doing that, first of all, you get the work done, but you do distinguish yourself as that person that was willing to go above and beyond, and again, ultimately making yourself look like an impact player.
Absolutely. Just setting the plan, right? Setting the playbook, setting the plan of how to move forward, and then getting people on board. Sometimes when there's not a plan in place, people just don't even attempt it because they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. So if there are like steps where you're like, oh, hold on, my brain works in order. Like I have to see lists. I need a list. I need to cross it off. I need to check the box. Like, so whenever I have a whole bunch of stuff I need to do, I always make a prioritized list because that's how my brain works. And I know many other people who work the same way, where like they need to know what to do first, what to work on next, and how to do it. And I think just doing that, if there's a situation where there is a project that nobody wants to kind of step up to do, that totally would set you apart. Yes.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And also, too, I think part of this ambiguity is the ambiguity of roles, right? If you're an individual contributor, you're like, well, I could do it, but it's not my job, and you don't necessarily want to overstep, right? Like, and I think that's part of what that might be. But even still, if you're the one saying, let me just get this started, that's a way to manage up to your boss too, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
because for all you know, like it may be the person may or may not be an effective leader. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But if you're the person to say, hey, listen, that project, I decided just to take a crack at it. I got Johnny to help me and Joni to help me. What do you think, right? That I don't know a leader, good or bad, that's going to say no to that. They're going to be
Right.
happy that someone took the initiative. But I think sometimes that ambiguity comes in, like, trying to stay in your lane. And I think, again, you need to, suss out the circumstances, but I think it's okay to get out of your lane once in a while to once again distinguish
Absolutely.
yourself.
Sometimes you have to, right? If it's so ambiguous that you don't know where to start, you have to kind of get out of your lane and do something that you're not comfortable doing just to get the ball rolling, you know?
Yep, yep, fair enough.
Absolutely.
So any questions on what an impact player is, or any more comments on this before we move on?
Yeah, any insights? Anybody want to give examples that you've seen or you've done? We'd love to hear it.
Okay. Well, if you feel free to chime in, we'll roll through to. So
Yeah.
why aspire to be an impact player? And I think we touched on this a little bit when we're talking about what an impact player really is. But
Mm-hmm.
but basically, to me, there's like some really really obvious payoffs here. Number one, and this is like why I embrace this book so much. But the number one for me is that sense of purpose, right? When you feel like you're doing a good job, you feel like you're making an impact, you feel like your contributions are actually, going, turning into results. There's job
Yeah.
satisfaction in that, right? Those meaningful contributions brings that passion, or and maybe it uncovers the passion that you didn't realize was there. And that sense of accomplishment, I think, will really help you, I think, continue to think of creative ideas and ways that you can contribute, outside of you, above and beyond your role, right? Like obviously you need to be doing your existing role,
Absolutely.
but if you can look for ways to kind of go above and beyond, I think that's going to make you better. And honestly, like I can't think of a situation where it wouldn't be recognized and seen as a positive. And we all know at the end of the year, when it's time to look at your accomplishments, one thing I would definitely recommend too is if you're looking in, like in as to play like an impact player, I would definitely be noting all of the accomplishments, right?
Yep.
Like I did X and it did Y, right? Like, you know what I mean? I saved 10 customers with this initiative. I generated,
Yes.
like new business opportunities in this amount.
Mm-hmm.
Quantify it in the same way that you quantify when you have a resume. And if you do it as you're moving through it, it's much easier at the end of the year to make your case when you're having like your review, or when you're looking to get some sort of promotion within your role. Maryann, what do you think?
I was about to say an accomplishment tracker is the number one way to just document all the things that you have done. So when you are in those meetings for that promotion or for that raise, you have a list that you can then refer to. Because if you try to do it at the last minute, you will forget everything you have done. You will think you did nothing and you will be lost. So yes, having an accomplishment tracker, I think, is the number one way just to keep track of all of it and make sure you're doing it. Because if you see your accomplishment tracker and you're like, oh, last month I really didn't do much, like you step it up, it'll make you step up for the next month, you know?
And
So
don't
I
forget to
totally,
have other people comment, right? If you're working within an organization, most of
yep.
the HR systems have a way for you to ask for recommendations from people
Mm-hmm.
internally that were on this project with you or that you helped out. And you can leverage that as well. So it's words from the outside. And the same with LinkedIn, right? If you work on something with someone, have them come back in and make a recommendation or up some skills for you or something like that, because those things
Yep.
will also help.
Oh,
Right.
Christine, I love that. I love that. Because who wouldn't do that for someone else, right? If someone helped me on a project, I'm like, of course I'm going to write a recommendation for you. Of course I'd be happy
Absolutely.
to. Kathy, did you have a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm watching what's happening in the chat, and there's a lot of discussion, and I hope I get this right, you guys. So just jump in if I don't. But um, I think it's about if you're um, sharing the responsibility, and other people are helping you, and they're learning to do what you do, and somehow you end up not getting credit for anything. Then what? Is there a way? Am I making sense?
Yeah,
That-
well, I
that-
mean that's a great question. And this reminds me of, like, again, earlier in my career, I thought, yeah, I'm just gonna work my butt off and the work will show up for itself. And
Mhm.
guess what? That's
You're
not a
s-
good strategy.
You're just
Um,
spinning your wheels. Yep.
yeah, because your boss is probably really busy doing whatever they do. And so the things that I would do, and the way that I changed that, like, bragging without bragging, would be on the one-on-ones. Or even if I didn't have one-on-ones, like, so put it this way, whenever I have a one-on-one with my leader, I have an agenda. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even, and like, I'll address the things. So we get on the call, I'm like, let me know what thing, actually, I would send it ahead of the call and say, hey, on the call, I want to talk about these 3 things in addition to whatever you want to talk about. And I would talk about status updates. So that's how you, like, humble brag it, especially if you're taking the initiative to say, hey, so that project nobody wanted to do, I just decided to take a stab at it. Joni and Johnny are helping me with it. What do you think? That's the time or a good opportunity to bring those things up. In addition to that, if you don't have one-on-ones regularly, because some bosses just don't, then I would do, especially if it's ongoing projects, I would do like a weekly update. Hey, just wanted to let you know I took the initiative on this thing. Let me know if this looks good to you. And also too, make sure to include others, because that's you leading by example. That's you, showing, like, I'm not just going to be like, oh, me, 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 me. I'm going to say Johnny and Joni help me too. What else can we do? That's how you take control of it. You have to find ways to let your leaders know what you're doing. Otherwise, if Johnny and Joni might not even be trying to leave you out of credit. They're just saying, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. That's also debatable too. It doesn't matter. But if you take that initiative, but again, I would definitely say, like, one-on-ones are for you, by the way. A lot of times one-on-ones turn into, like, when I was in sales, it was like looking at my pipeline. That's not a freaking one-on-one. That's a pipeline review. My one-on-one is about my growth, about my strategies, about the things that I'm looking for. So own it. Right, do an agenda. Maryann, what do you think?
Yeah, I also want to say focusing on those tasks that are going to move the needle, that are going to
Yes.
make the impact.
Yes.
I don't like, we've all spun our wheels and just kind of like did all extra work and did more and more work. And I saw that in the chat too, where it's like, if you do more work, then you get more work. It's not about doing more work. I think it's about doing the right work and doing the work that will actually make a difference and move the needle versus doing the work that is just kind of like, you're literally just spinning your wheels. That's the best way I can describe it. Pam, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
So if that, oh, can you hear me? Yeah. So if
Yeah.
that project is moving the needle,
Mhm.
and especially if you've included other people, make sure you document it, because you want your manager to be able to bring that up, because your manager is always looking for, what can I show my manager that we've
Yes.
done? So
Yeah.
if you can make that into something that they go, wow, that's great, make sure you share it. You're helping everybody and being
Absolutely.
Yes.
impactful for yourself and everybody else.
And also going back to that, you want your manager to look good to their manager. So I feel
Yes.
like I always go into one-on-ones, like, what can I do to take something off your plate? Because that's how you're really going to find out what will be worthwhile working on versus working on things that might not be as worthwhile too. So yeah, I like that comment, Pam. Thank you.
That's a great comment, Pam. Thank you for sharing. Trevor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm bringing up some stuff that's happening in the chat for those who may not be having as much of an eye on it, but I've had it to where I think there's some analysis that you need to do on your environment a little bit, because I've had it to where, I'm focused on the result. I'm trying to help out. I'm trying to, bring people into what I'm working on that I think will move the needle. And sometimes it's come around where, I'm almost replaced as the front man for an initiative I started, and then I start to seem like unimportant or not impactful. And then kind of what Maryann was just talking about, how do you make sure that as you do these impacts, that your hard work is not just rewarded with more hard work? Like, obviously you work hard and everything, but you want to get some level of recognition for the work, not just doing it just for the sake of doing it. And I've had it to where some of the environments I've been in, there's not as much of an open dialogue that can be had for me to even share the accomplishments that I've done, due to various, like, internal politics and whatnot. So it's sort of an open-ended thought. Curious what you guys think.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and so when you're saying like you're not able to communicate, so you've not sent an email like explaining the initiative and status updates after, after it, and if you have that, it was never responded to.
Well, so for instance, my last role, as some of you may know, is a little bit of a unique space. But for instance, I was told sometimes directly, you don't talk to the manager like we talk to the manager.
Well, then, honestly, like, I guess all I have to say about that was in those instances, there aren't, certain situations you have good leadership and bad leadership. Obviously, you're not there anymore. So, they're, somebody that really, maybe not people that are going to respond to this sort of, uh, you know, sense of purpose. That some companies just really don't get it. You know what I mean? And so you're not going to succeed regardless of what you do. And I think
If someone's saying that, yeah, right. If someone's saying you don't talk to the manager, we talk to the manager, that you're being treated like a child, that might not be the best environment to be in the first place.
exactly, like I don't know where you're going to succeed in those instances. And that's the
Yeah,
thing, like I mean, totally get it. Like, you know what I mean? That the best case scenario is that you do these things and that it will be recognized. And I
right.
always feel like I'm going to go into any situation thinking like best intent. You know what I mean? That who I'm dealing with is going to have the best intent. But
Of course.
regardless, these sort of things, and especially if you make your own, Maryann was talking about a tracker, somehow track it, like your accomplishments, it's stuff that you can take away. And when you start, because to me, if I was in that environment, I would start actively looking for a new role. And then those are the things you can put on your resume and the accomplishments that you can talk about. Because anyone, like if you talk to a coach or anybody, will say your resume should not only does it need to have numbers, but it needs to talk about the impact that had. Right.
Yep.
So when you're going above and beyond and not just the role, that's how you distinguish yourself. And also it's a way for you to kind of establish your reputation and your brand. Because that's one thing I'm obsessed with right now. There is no loyalty anymore with companies, right? We are a business of one. We need to really be thinking in that mindset and be ready at a moment's notice. We don't know. You could walk into work and there could be like a layoff, right? So that's being really extreme. But my point is if you've got this mindset and you're tracking it and you're building your own brand outside of work, you're much, much better positioned when you start looking for that new role. Maryann, what do you
Right.
think?
I was going to say, even like looking for a new role within the company, it doesn't necessarily
Mm,
mean you have to quit your job and go somewhere else. Like
yeah.
you just might not be in the right vertical or right role in your position. But like if you go somewhere else and you have a different manager, or there's just a different work stream there and a different, playbook and a different way it's handled, that can make a world of difference. I'm truly a firm believer in that, like your manager makes or breaks your job, because when you have a great manager, you love going to work, you like enjoy what you're doing, you have that job satisfaction, versus the opposite. When you don't have a great manager, you're just like, what do I do? And that's when I think you just start looking internally. Personally, that's what I would do. I would just start looking somewhere internally, not necessarily at other companies, but just under someone else so that you can really shine. Because if they're not letting you shine, that's a detriment to you and that's going to affect you in the long run.
That's
Yeah.
true, but like at a startup, there is nowhere else to go.
That is true.
Or
Yeah.
a
So
small
startup is
company.
different.
If you
Right.
work at a large company, you should absolutely leverage that. That's 100%. But if you're working at a smaller company, maybe there is only one CS team. In which case, then, but you're right, Maryann. If you're at a large company and it's a good company, why not just make a move internally? Ashna, what do you think?
I feel like I had two thoughts, and I feel like then a lot of other thoughts kind of came in because of the great conversation. But I'll try to keep it short. And Maryann, like something you just mentioned at the end, like I think I could see a good example of that myself. Like go find something else that where you can continue to grow, evolve, and learn, and do all of that. Now, it's not everybody is going to have that ways of doing that. So, but I mean,
Right.
the other thing, it's kind of like if leaders are saying like you shouldn't be, I should be the one talking to the that was a good point. Like I also kind of think like how you approach it is also there. So one of the things, like I always say, it's like you really have to understand and maybe take a couple minutes, like psychology of people. And what I'm not trying to like don't go into like understanding people in detail. Like you don't need to take classes or understand behavioral all that. But I think just like understanding who are you as you know, what your persona is versus the person that you were talking to, the person in the other side. And I think if you can understand that, you can call it politics, you can call it understanding psychology, you can call it understanding whatever, but I think that can really help in terms of like how you approach that. If you know your leader is act and reacts this way, you know, then you can approach it in a different way. And some of the examples that I'll tell you is like, our leader really like to showcase like, here's what my team is doing, you know. So I make sure to know when the leadership meeting is happening with the executives, so that 2 weeks or like a week ahead or like two days ahead, I can talk to my leader and be like, okay, what are you going to be presenting? Because I want to know. And, you know, I want to like, here's a slide that I put together about like, you know, my contributions about this quarter or whatever that I'd like you to, you know, kind of like showcase. Right there, you're just, you know, you're making it easy for them. They like to showcase. It's because I'm understanding their persona, I'm understanding how they work. And again, I'm not saying this would work in every environment, but I think you have to go down to that level sometimes for you to make that impact. And one last thing I would add, because I think we were talking about a lot of things. The other things, like when I was leading, I had you know, people, this is something I would, if they come up with some ideas and if they create something, you know, I always tell them, make a copy of this that you can take with you if you end up leaving tomorrow. You know, so it could be a presentation, it could be a sheet that you put together, it could be like a project plan that you did, whatever that may be. You know, I always told them, like, because this is, you've put your time, money, your time and energy into this. This is something you obviously make a copy and then take out all the, you know, the company data, whatever that may be. Right. But I think that is something like visuals are always better to showcase. So along with your accomplishment tracker, you know, make sure you have something tangible too, because then that would be amazing to showcase when you're, you know, going on for next role or whatever that may be.
No, that's awesome. Thanks, Asha. Okay, we have a couple more slides, but we want to hear from Randall and Jay. Randall, what are your thoughts?
Just real quick, I think, you know, part of also, you know, immersing yourself in your job is also don't being afraid to get involved with other people, especially higher up in the organization, right? Because the more they can be aware of who you are, especially when you're new, then the more you're going to be able to make an impact because they are aware of what you do, especially if you did well when you're working with different people within the organization versus staying in your own lane and not really being I don't want to say aggressive, but immersing yourself in areas where you may not feel comfortable or know about it, but at least giving yourself that visibility into who you are and your ability to actually make an impact now or even down the line.
I love that. Absolutely. I love that. And I think what, you know, I love all these points everybody's bringing up because, you know, again, this isn't going to work in every environment and you do have to kind of adjust for where you are, but that doesn't mean you should stop trying because that's what I'm talking about, how like we become zombies, like the Walking Dead at our jobs, because we do get beaten down maybe like because we're not in a good situation, but we shouldn't have to be. Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of along those lines, something that I've been implementing recently a lot more often, and it's honestly yielded some pretty awesome results, is managing up. And I think there's been a topic about this already in the past, but managing up has worked tremendously. Even today, I just had my quarterly conversation today. And full disclosure, like me and my boss did not always see eye to eye from the very beginning. And it was one of those situations where like this could potentially end up being a toxic environment for me. But the way that I approached it was just like, you know, he's in the leadership team. I want to get into the leadership team. What do I need to know to be able to make it up there? And that's where instead of approaching conversations with, well, you're not recognizing me for XYZ, what I ended up doing was, well, maybe the things that I'm doing don't really matter to him. Maybe that's why he's not bringing it up. So then I approach a conversation with what's top of mind for you? What is, you know, kind of turning customer success inwards. What are like the top 3 goals that you have for this year? And where are you struggling? And I do that at least once a month. You know, I'm the one that finds time on his calendar and I'm like, I want to meet on this day. Let's do this, XYZ. So then today in our quarterly conversation, there was nothing to discuss. He already has all my performance. He already has all the kudos tracker, the performance tracker, all of that. He already has all that because I've done that for him.
I love that, Jay. And it goes back to what Ashna said, make it easy. like
Yep.
make it easy for your manager. And that is exactly how to do it. You make it easy. You ask them what they want, what they need to make their lives easier. And then it just sets you apart, and sets you in a totally different class.
100%. And Jay, I did the same thing with my leader last year. And this is a guy I like though, but he's so busy. He had a big team, and it was really difficult to kind of get time in his calendar. So when we had the one-on-ones, I read this book, and a friend said, ask your manager, what is the single most important project of the year? And guess what it was? It was a life-sucking project no one wanted to be on. And I said, put my name on that list. And he was shocked. Well, first of all, he was shocked. I asked, exactly what you said. What are the top three? I said just the top
Yeah.
one. And he was like, oh, and it really, because that lightened their load. So you spot on. I love that.
I had,
Dude,
that was the
amazing
exact
insights.
same thing. That was the exact same thing I did. I was full disclosure, like last December, we went through layoffs and it hit us hard, and nobody was happy about it. Obviously, like who's happy about it? But we were, we're a small team, less than 35 people in the entire company, and my team in particular was impacted, and we were a team of 4 people.
Oof.
So, we were very close, and that hurt. So when I came into the conversation with him, he was, I'm very sure, ready for me to chew him out about the whole, how dare you lay off my team after all we've done. But instead I was like, no, clearly what we're working on isn't impactful. So what's impactful? What's going on? And that's when he started detailing about how NRR was the biggest thing, that he's the head of product and success. So he was more focused on product stuff. So I was like, okay, got it. So I need to find a way to connect product, what he does, with customer success, what I want to do. And now, again, to this point, even today, a part of our discussion in the quarterly conversation was him saying thank you, because I never feel like I'm caught off guard in the leadership meetings. I always know what's going on with the team. I never have to ask.
Because
That's
you're
awesome.
proactively communicating with him. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. And that wasn't an ideal circumstance, right? You could have given up. And sometimes, and I agree, sometimes you do have to give up. Sometimes you do have to figure out a new role for yourself. But look at that. You rehabilitated that. He now sees you as an asset and an ally, which
Yep.
not too bad, right? Not too shabby.
That's
Trevor,
where you
real
want to
quick,
be.
because we've got to get these last two slides. What do you got?
Right. So I've brought this up a couple of times before, but I think it's worth mentioning in this particular conversation. When it comes to doing the impact and everything, obviously not every environment, like we said, is going to be conducive. But one of the things that I noticed, it happened to me, and I've talked to a lot of people in our community that this has happened to, where they've tried to be an impact player, they've done an initiative, they've done a project with their team or by themselves, whatever. They have the middle, or they have the beginning, they have the middle, but they don't have the ending. The company never tracked the metrics. The company never gave them access to the data. And so when they either are trying to go for the promotion, go for a new job, if they get laid off, sort of argue for their thing, and I'm speaking from personal experience, it's hard to relay what you did outside of just vibes that you made something better. Like you can't point and say like, oh, my team and we touched, ARR and did this. Like obviously it depends on the company. But I think this is more prevalent in our community than people sometimes talk about, and it's tough to figure out how to address it and how to solve for it when you don't have that ending to your story to give.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. But I guess for me, I would challenge that, because I do feel that, if you're working on a project, what's the outcome you were looking for. That's number one. And if you achieve that outcome, then that's what you would measure. But if for whatever reason, maybe some projects do die on the vine, but then I would extract what was the positives that came out of it, right? Oh, I launched this learning academy. I launched this, collaborated and saved a customer, whatever it might be. You don't need metrics for that, from any sort of a thing. I don't know, but Maryann, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I was going to say, you can also estimate metrics,
Yeah.
know what you're dealing with. You know what I mean? You have an idea of your AOV. You may not have the exact numbers, but you have an idea of those things. And there's always ways to find metrics. Like you mentored 5 people, you know what I mean? There's always a way to spin it where you can get numbers. Carly Agar is amazing at this.
Oh, she's amazing.
She's amazing in general, but
Yeah, but you're right. But she knows how to extract that.
Yes, totally. And
And that's what you have to do.
Yep. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you have to do.
No,
Yeah.
it's a tough one. That's a tough question, but that's what I would do. And I agree with you, Maryann. I
Yeah.
think you're right. There's a lot of ways. But let's finish these slides, because if we don't do breakout groups, Jan will crucify us.
We're gonna get yelled at, guys. We're gonna get yelled at. We'll never be allowed back.
They'll throw us out.
Yep.
So going through this quickly, another reason to aspire personal and professional growth. I think we touched on that in a lot of the comments here.
Yeah.
Innovation and creativity. I'm gonna say something bold. I think every single one of us has creativity in us. It manifests in different ways. So why not leverage that? Like, we're all like, I can do certain things. I'm better at certain things. Maryann's better at other things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And we all know where our strengths are. So if you have the opportunity to leverage that creative side of you to make something new and improve something, a process or whatever it might be, and innovate something, oh my God, it's amazing. Like, why not do it? And then also too, it's an opportunity to coach and mentor. I know personally in my career, I have been, thank goodness, like I've had leaders and others who have taken me under their wing. I was so naive when I was younger. I was just like always scared. I didn't want to ask questions. I didn't want anybody to see what I didn't know. Thank goodness people took me under their wing. You could be that person, because those people that have coached me or taken me under the wing will always be like special to me, because they've helped me improve my career. Maryann, what do you think about these last two spots?
Absolutely. I think like having that innovative mindset and just like bringing a fresh set of eyes to something, and that beginner's mindset is huge. And like any project you're working on, you will have strengths no matter what you're doing. There will be different strengths on the team. There will be different people that bring in different perspectives. And I think that is a huge thing that sets apart those impact players, because they're not scared to say, here, this is what I think, and I think it does take time to get to that point, because I was not like that. I did not do that. I was the same way, Cynthia, where I just kind of like shut up, didn't say a word. I was like, nope, I just don't know. I'm going to look dumb. I don't want to say this. And you get to a point where you do it enough where you feel comfortable doing it. And then you just kind of like speak your mind, and people welcome it. People are like, I like that. That's like a fresh, you know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have these fresh ideas that someone else might not have thought of.
Yeah, 100%. And then finally, really quick, we'll just zip through this. How can I become an impact player, right?
Yes, you can always go back to these slides. Yes, we're going to fly through them, but you'll have these resources.
Problem solver, become that problem solver, be the collaborator, strategist, right? Strategy, look at high up. What do you see? What moving parts, and how can you add within the overall process? Connector, right? Nurture those relationships internally and externally, and change agent. We all hate change, right? But that's what CS is all about. So if you're that person that can really facilitate that change, and then through all the other things, problem solving, collaborating, all the other things, you're going to make a real impact.
And feel free to use these in the questions too. Like when you're answering the questions in your group, keep these slides open just so you can refer to them, because they give some like tips and ways to do it that might stir up a memory of something that you want to talk about in your breakout room.
Definitely. So we're gonna go to breakout rooms for 10 minutes.
I was in the middle of a villain rant when you pulled us on.
I'm sorry. I was trying to like leave as close to 10 minutes.
No. You did the responsible thing. It was just the timing was very comedic. Because
I have to apologize to my group. I'm sorry, Christine and Pam. I hit the get out of the breakout too soon. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I know we're like 60 minutes away, 60 seconds away, but like
no worries.
Is there a button and the button just wants you to click it? That's
I know. I just want to say, I want to follow up with what Christine said. And so we were talking about the fact, let me just make sure I got it right. You were having networking meetings and you would hear something that they said, you go, oh, and you thought you had an idea of their solution,
yes,
right?
That's it.
Okay, so I just want to add on to what Christine said. I've been having a lot of those conversations. So I too have my own business, but I'm building up almost like, is it a job or is it anyway? What I'm doing is I'm recording with Fathom, and I'm having these conversations, and they'll say they need something, and I can actually pull up the transcript and say in AI, hey, what was it that we said? And I can come up with a project from there and come up with suggestions. And they're like, oh my God, that was great. Yes, please help.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I
So-
haven't been formalizing it in that way.
Record your meetings as much as possible because you're brilliant in these meetings. What most of us are. And then you can use the transcript.
Yeah, I feel so smart.
You can use that transcript and you can go, wow, and bring it through AI and come up with your project through it. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Okay.
Anybody else have any insights in their breakouts that they want to share? We can listen to a couple before so we don't keep you too long. Everybody
Could I
go.
throw one in that I didn't have time to do?
Yeah, please, Ty,
Yes.
get in there.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so-
Ty.
No, you're fine. We had little time. So one thing that's really helped me being an impact player is when I look for those opportunities to grow, I look for two really big things. I look for something that is really cross-functional, if I can, like I have one project right now that is literally every department, fantastic. And I want things that I know have high executive visibility and buy-in, right? So that's the map that I'm always trying to get on. I'll tell you, that's been at least my way in pretty much every company I've worked at.
Well, I like that. I like that. That's awesome. Anyone else?
My group, we were talking about how to come up with some of these sort of like metrics and how to show impact. If you're like me and my partner were, where we were kind of building things up. So documentation is critical, but also doing it in a smart way. Make sure that you're utilizing the tools that you have. If you don't have the tools that you need, try to advocate for getting the tools that you need. Is it your CRM needs to change? Is it that you need to get a documentation tool? Is it that you need to, work with your teams to get access to the data? Now, sometimes you don't get it, sometimes you do, but that's how you kind of approach these things, and just, you want to work smarter, not harder.
I like that. That's awesome.
Always.
Wow, so many great insights. My God, as always, I'm going to take away some things and think about how I can apply them to my own world. Maryann, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
We had a great conversation in our group. This entire session has just been wonderful. I was saying we went over and had less time in the breakout room. I apologize because of all the great insights. So thank you all for your contributions and for letting us know. I apologize. We checked this document earlier to make sure that it was accessible to everyone, but I guess it wasn't. So sorry about that. But thank you all so much for all of your insights. I'm sorry we can't read them, but it was great to hear the ones that we did here and in our breakout room. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.